Welcome to Editor in Grief, a podcast about the news business hosted by John Biggs and Jim Rich. With a combined 60 years of experience in newspapers, TV, and online, we bring sanity to an insane industry. Wondering how to manage misinformation? How to stay informed? How artists and writers will survive AI? And how the news cycle sausage is made? This is the podcast for you. This is Editor in Grief. John Biggs.
I'm Jim Rich.
And today we have Brian Karem. He's a Salon columnist and is working on a documentary, but I'm going to let Jim run the show for a bit. Welcome, Brian.
Well, thanks for having me. Sounds like fun. Yeah. Let's rock and roll, baby.
Yeah, Editor in Grief. That's all we do is complain.
I like editors and I like grief.
Yeah, Brian, so again, thanks for joining us. As I said, it's a pleasure to speak with you. I know you've had lots of experience on the topic that we're going to talk about today, which is this unfortunate circumstance that I call decorum journalism. And I'll just give a quick definition of it and then let you riff a little bit on your experience with it, which to me, decorum journalism comes down to a group of people, typically political reporters. I also saw this in the sports world as well, which obviously has less, real world consequences, where reporters are afraid to ask questions that are going to upset sources, subjects, or even worse, fellow journalists. And I think we're seeing a lot of that play out now. And obviously, over the 25 years I've been in the business, I saw it play out more frequently than I would have liked. And now when you see the coverage, and again, I'll put air quotes around coverage of what Elon Musk is doing with the DOGE, whatever the hell that is, and what Trump is, the crazy declarations from Trump day in and day out. The most recent, of course, yesterday with the idiotic idea that the U.S. is going to occupy Gaza. So you wrote a column in Salon recently, sort of decrying a little bit of this before what I just mentioned had taken place. So I'm going to stop talking and let you riff a little bit about what I've just said and your experience with decorum journalism and where you think it's leading us and how we can fix it.
Well, I don't call
and give me that answer in 90 seconds, please. Go ahead.
I don't call it decorum journalism. I call it bend over and take it in the ass journalism, because that's exactly what we're doing. It was my mentor was Sam Donaldson, who said, I'm not worried about the rude reporter. I'm worried about the reporter who's too disinclined to ask a question. And it was the name of my podcast is called Just Ask the Question. And that came from my other mentor, who you may have known as Helen Thomas. And Helen said, Brian, it doesn't matter what the question is. It doesn't matter if they answer it. It just matters that you ask it. That way you've put the issue on the record. So never be afraid of asking a question. And that goes for even those that you think may be stupid questions. And I have heard a lot of stupid questions in that briefing room, but it's never the questions. It's always the answers. The most famous incident of that was there was a reporter fresh off the choo-choo who was talking to Betty Ford. And he was with a gaggle of reporters. They're in the East Room of the White House, and the young kid, and she points him out to ask a question, and he says, hey, have any of your kids ever smoked pot? And all the reporters said, oh my God, that's a stupid question, right up to the point where she said yes. And then it was a story. So never be afraid to ask a question. What we've got today is more access journalism than anything else. Now, look, you have to have access to get sources. You have to have sources to get news. But if you're sacrificing what you should be doing for your readers, viewers, to get access, you're not doing your job. And that's the real problem today. We're more worried and more enamored of access than we are of doing our damn job. So the job is to hold people accountable. Ben Bagdikian was another mentor of mine when I was growing up. And I loved what Bagdikian said. I even have it, on Blue Sky. It's my saved post. It says, never forget that your obligation is to the people. It is not at heart to those who pay you, or to your editor, or to your sources, or to your friends, or to the advancement of your career. It is to the public. And that is whether or not they want to hear what you have to say or not. I mean, what's funny is, for me, Blue Sky, I get the same crap that I get on X, but just from different ends of the spectrum. They don't like it that I say that Biden's communication staff sucked. It did. It's the worst I've ever worked with. Trump was the worst I ever worked with. Then Biden came in and couldn't crawl over that bar. And now Trump is back and he can't crawl over the bar he set himself earlier. So it's just a continual slide down the hill. And the reporters, because you have 6 companies that own or operate 95% of what you see, read, or hear. They own they call it legacy, but it's corporate media. And you used to have to come into that White House with some experience. I mean, I remember the first day, Sam Donaldson took me aside and he said, Brian, you see that first row in the Brady briefing room? He said, there is more than 200 years of experience there. Listen to it, learn from it. Then he turned to Helen and he goes, well, she's got 190 of it. So then she made a smart ass comment and he said, hey, Helen, it's okay to have an unexpressed thought. And she said, Sam, when it comes to you having a lot of unexpressed thoughts. And I said, I don't know what I'm doing for the rest of my life, but this is golden. But today you walk into that briefing room and if you're lucky, you've got 70 years of experience in that front row. So there's
let me stop you right there just for a second, because I think that's a good jumping off point, because so I've got some thoughts on this. So I'm with. Trust me, I could hurt myself. So I'm with you on what's happened as far as the decline in experience, because we've all been pushed to the side because we had too much experience and we cost too much money. And as the industry has shrunk for reasons that we don't have enough time to get into today, that's sort of the cause and effect that's taken place. But there's one other aspect here. So when you talk about the amount of experience in that room, in the White House briefing room, back in the quote unquote days, that would have been great. But I also argued, and I did back when I was editor of the Daily News, that because of this decorum sort of access groupthink journalism that happens in that room, even when it is loaded with a lot of experience, that most of the time the best stories are coming from outside of that room, not from inside of the room.
Well, always. They're not mutually exclusive. That's not mutually exclusive.
Right.
That's being part of a groupthink. I mean, I've sat in that White House briefing room. I've taught or outside of the briefing room after the briefing, and there'll be 3 or 4 reporters talking, right? And one will say, well, I think this is what they meant. And I think this is what they meant. And someone else will say, I think that's what they meant. And then one of the reporters will go on TV and go, sources close to the White House say, and I go, well, wait a minute. Technically, I guess we were close to the White House. We were in the briefing room. But the fact of the matter is, you're just engaged in idle speculation with your peers. The problem in that briefing room is not just a lack of education, responsibility, and experience. And we've, of course, lost institutional knowledge. All of that is a problem. It's the idea that you've never covered a beat before. You don't know what the hell you're doing. And you're stuck in that room around people who are just like you, right, who are in that group bubble. You go to all the damn same parties. You're around the same people. You think that you're part of the in crowd, baby, and you're not, and you never will be, and you don't want to be. But you have engaged in group think. And so the only difference between now and then is that back then there were more people who were willing to take a chance. There were more people actually doing the reporting than are today. And of course, the best reporting goes on out. I have not been, except once in this new administration, to these briefings because I got to tell you, they're pointless. They're worthless. It's a freaking Donald Trump rally. And the reporters are going, yep. And I mean, it's like listening to magpies. No, it's not just a lack. You can both be right. It's both a lack of experience and groupthink. And it's really bad when it's combined with a lack of experience and the groupthink, because you have little or no chance of reporting real news. And you think you're important. You think you're more. I got in a fight one time. One of the few times when Joe Biden actually looked at me, pointed, and smiled. He's leaving the East Room. I'm trying to get a question out. There's a person who's in the pool asking a stupid question. And they go, you have to let me ask a question. I'm in the pool. I go, that's exactly why you shouldn't ask a question. You're stupid. And Biden sat there. Biden just sat there and smiled and pointed at me, answered my question, and left. That's a problem.
So let's take all that and now let's apply it to real life events. And so yesterday, look, I'm sitting at home on my couch waiting for every Wednesday to talk to John or whoever we have on here about this stuff so I can feel, old and cranky. But I haven't been keeping up quite as virulently as I have in the past with every single second of every day and the news, what's happening in the news.
That's probably wise, Jim.
Yeah, right. For my own mental health.
Save you a lot of heartache.
Right. So, but so yesterday, So yesterday, as I saw the 1 millionth headline about Musk and his, middle schoolers he's got, rifling through the federal government, and I thought, well, okay, has anybody actually explained how he's been allowed to do this? And I went and I looked, and our good friend Google gave me an endless list, all within the previous 24 hours. So everyone jumped on the same bandwagon and thought, oh wow, it's been 3 weeks and we haven't answered this question yet. So maybe we should try to answer it. And the answers were all non-answers. Basically,
well, they're not technical journalists. They don't understand technology. They don't understand
well,
what they're doing.
But it's worse than that, John. And I think that this is what it comes to is what you're seeing is that, look, I fully believe that the federal government is bloated and probably does need some trimming. But because the DC political world has done such a poor job over the years of focusing on the bloat or what's, the corruption and what's happening or not happening in the government at the, beyond just the very top layer, that we are now in this situation where when that DC political world is forced to look at what this insanity has become with Musk and Trump, they don't know where to start. And they actually don't know how it works. So they can't explain what Musk is doing or not doing, whether it's right or wrong. They just go, wow, this is crazy and it feels like it's wrong, but you know what? We really don't know. And that's the sentiment I took from every story I read on, which is maddening and frightening and depressing.
Well, because I don't want to get technical because I could probably get on a soapbox about this too. But Brian,
do it.
No, it's fine. This isn't a podcast about. We're not going to dissect news stories yet, I don't think. But yeah,
News.
like I said, journalists are kind of stupid and they don't understand a lot of stuff. And so,
journalists are stupid and don't understand stuff. Good journalists actually
can learn. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And they can research. So Brian, is the idea just like we've kind of done away with embargoes per se, is the idea of a especially a press conference at the White House, is it useful anymore? Should it just be phased out?
Well, I'll go back to my buddy Mike McCurry, who was a press secretary for Clinton and introduced the televised press conference to the world. It was the biggest mistake he ever made. That's according to him. He said, because what has happened is that people want their viral moment, their gotcha moment, where they can be seen asking the tough question. And so the real challenge is to get information. Now, look, I've gotten as much information walking up to the press from all administrations, gotten my best information, not in the briefings, but, going up and talking to him and putting in the time to do my job right. The briefings, I have relegated myself to asking questions when they're just so full of bullshit, I can't take it anymore. I'll press them. Or as I told Karine Jean-Pierre, I said, if you are not asked a question that I think needs to be asked, and you haven't called on me, I will shout it out as you get off the stage. It had, in light of what Helen said, it has to be put on the record that you all have been asked this question. So there are times when but she was pretty smart. And whenever I was in the room, she made sure she called on me. She didn't want to be yelled at as she was leaving. Smart woman. Not so much with the Trump people. So there are times when it is viable and valuable to be in that briefing room, and what goes on there is necessary. But for the most part, it is not. The problem is there are very few people in this Trump administration who are going to explain things to you. It's all propaganda. They've done, the Biden people were horrible. All right. They didn't return emails. They ghosted people. They didn't answer questions. They never put, I told them for 3 years, I said, if you just put Biden out for 10 minutes in this briefing room every 6 to 8 weeks, and, he does his tight 10 and then goes, hey guys, I got to leave. I'm tired. I need a nap. And takes off. People go, oh, there's the president. He's in the room with us. Rah, rah, rah. And so when he had the bad, the bad moment at the first debate, you would have given him the benefit of the doubt. You would have said, oh, well, hell, I've seen him, every 6 weeks for the last 3 years. He just had a bad day. But he didn't do that. So everyone thought that that it was, a mental breakdown, and they booted his ass from the ticket, which was horrible. The Democrats screwed the pooch on that. But it does show that, for various reasons, being in that briefing room still matters. It's the appearance of being there. It's showing people that you're there. But what you're not getting, and we haven't gotten in a very long time, are honest answers to issues. It's a stage play, and it's rigged. For example, as much as the new administration has said they're going to bend over to supply, press passes to the new media, and let me define that real quick. I don't give a shit if you got an opinion. That's great. A lot of these people, anybody can have an opinion. And a lot of these people are just opinion makers. If you're going to call yourself a reporter, then I'm going to be the crusty old editor who says, I want an editor. I at least want a copy editor who goes over your copy and says, where'd you get that fact? That's your opinion. That's coming out. Vetted factual information. Then you're a reporter or a journalist. But, I used to be told that a journalist was an out-of-work reporter, so I'll stick with reporter. So all of that, pushing that aside, they are valuable for that. But the one thing that these people lied to you about as far as independent reporters, they gave one seat, right? And when she talks about the president, he's already had several press conferences. No, he's met in front of the pool, which, by the way, is the very same corporate or legacy media that they have disparaged. So it's all rigged. It's all a game. They even got the White House Correspondents Association. They put the fear of God into them that they were going to, reorder the seats in the Brady briefing room. They haven't done that. Right? But they scared the WHCA into thinking that was going to happen. So for the first 2 weeks of the administration, guess who was putting out the president's schedule? It wasn't the president, and it wasn't his staff. It was the president of the White House Correspondents Association, and that's a clear conflict of interest, a violation of what you're supposed to be doing in that briefing room, and a violation of journalistic standards. And it is abhorrent. And it is one of the things that bothers me the most about the media is that we have fallen in lockstep, bent over at the knee, and getting raw dogged up the wazoo by this administration.
Two things from that. So one is it's sort of perfectly fitting and symbolic that the thing that the press association got most upset about is, oh, you're moving
our seats, yeah,
our seating arrangement. Oh my God. Well, so there's that, which is just absolutely perfect for the moment we're in. But secondly, and more importantly, I had another buddy of mine text me this morning. He's not a journalist; he's an accountant. He's not a news junkie. He sends me this story saying that the New York Times has increased their subscriptions by 8 trillion here in the last few weeks or last month since Trump took over. And he says to me in the text, "Oh, looks like there's still hope for journalism after all." And I just hit my forehead and I thought, this is what the general public thinks when they see stuff like that. They think that journalism is in a fine place and that there's nothing wrong. And that, to me, that's the problem. No?
That's the biggest issue.
Of the entertainment industries. As I said, 6 companies own 95% of what you see, read, or hear. And guess what? Those are entertainment companies. So they're cutting costs. And as long as they have it, it's all tilted toward money. And so if they can build an audience that goes viral, that gets viral looks, clickbait, etc., aimed at what you already believe, right? Instead of informing you, we're entertaining you, infotaining you, making sure that we give you something that reinforces your own beliefs, whether or not it's factual or not. And we've lost people who understand what real journalism is. Institutional knowledge isn't there. When I have a reporter that would come to me and go, hey, this is a story, this is what I think. I go, I don't give a shit what you think. I barely care what I think. What the hell do you know? Go get vetted, factual. There are people that don't even know how to do that anymore. And the people in the U.S. know there's something wrong with journalism. They don't think that we're doing better. They think we're doing worse, but they don't know what the problem is. They can only see it within their narrow informational silo and are unaware of what the real problem is. And I wrote a book about it. It's called Free the Press. I'll plug it now wherever fine books are sold. And it's the truth. The bottom line is the consolidation of the media, the consolidation of ownership. Look, 6 companies run most of the groceries, 4 companies own most of the oil, and 6 companies own most of the media. What do you think the problem is? The current president has 11 billionaires in his cabinet or on his staff. Folks, The fight is between the rich and the poor, and they're screwing us in the process.
Okay, hold on. I think Jim.
Did we lose Jim? Did I shock him into submission? I'm telling you.
Oh,
is that tough? Hey, Jim, good to see you. We thought we lost you.
No respect.
I'm telling you, no respect, no respect.
You're
I
recording
see him
now.
too.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead, John. That's my
there.
rant. My constant rant is that we just simply have lost our audience. And the reason is, and look, the government did it, beginning with Ronald Reagan. They took away the guardrails. They took away the regulations. So there is no competition. It was Ben Bagdickian again who said that you want to have real diversity in the press, you have to have diversity of ownership. We don't have that. We don't have real journalism today. We have cheap entertainment. And unless that changes, we're in a world of hurt because we have a country that is not well educated, not well informed. God, there are people that believe in flat, Neil deGrasse Tyson said, there are people on this earth that believe in the flat earth. And he goes, that tells you two things. We have freedom of speech and we have no education.
I remember somebody's noted that sports are the only thing on television that you don't know the outcome to. They're like the only natural storytelling. But what you're saying exactly is that news is the same way. We have no idea what the outcome is going to be. But the trick is we got to have our points scored. We have to have somebody fall down on the field. We have to do this and this. And we consume it just constantly. 20 minutes in, how do we fix all this?
Well, I think that to fix it, and I'm upset with the Biden administration and equally upset with the Trump administration and every damn administration since Ronald Reagan. By the way, Jim, you're on mute if you want to talk. I just noticed. The problem is you're going to have to break up the media monopolies. At some point in time, Biden railed against monopolies and for unions, but sadly did not extend it to that of journalism. We have to have more. There are twice the number of people on this planet is on the day that I was born, and a quarter of the number of reporters. There is a market and demand for news. You see that all the time, but you don't see it being implemented. You don't see real journalism being done. And to encourage it, you need to give tax relief to the small businessman. You need to encourage local journalism. There are 45% of the counties in this country, that's nearly half the counties in this country, do not have local reporting. No local source for news, none. There's no local newspaper, there's no local radio station, no local TV, no local news. So what you're left with is the top of the food chain, and they're about division. The bottom of the food chain and local reporting is all about, hey, everybody wants their streets paved. Everyone wants the schools and the hospitals to work. That type of reporting, and parents want to see their kids playing football in the local paper, and kids, the swim team news. So local newspapers, invest in them. By the way, local reporting is the source for most national stories. And when you remove local reporting and local news outlets, you remove the cohesion that leads to cooperation rather than division. So I want to see the media monsters broken up. I want to see a reinvestment in local news. I want to see tax breaks for local news. I want to see startups and low interest loans to those who want to start local news. They say that newspapers are dying. Damn straight they are. And the frickin' government killed them. People still will read and cut out the picture of their kid playing local sports and put it on the refrigerator if you would just make it possible for them to survive. And they don't.
Brian, so I'm with you on the thoughts on local journalism, but as we've seen from the first attempts at that, there are the nonprofit local news outlets.
That's not gonna work. That's bullshit.
No, right. Well, that's what I'm getting at. So what you talk about, tax breaks, et cetera, this comes down to an economic model, a business model. And let's get, John and I have talked about this before.
I've already proved that can work. I ran a local community newspaper group of 3 newspapers for 12 years, and I proved how you can do it. And by God, if you want to do it, you can do it. You got to invest in it. That's all it is. You've got to be enough. You've got to invest enough to be on the air. And by the way, it's not just local newspapers. If you're a local media, you're a local newspaper, you're a local blogger, you're a live streamer, you're everything. You're a one-stop shop on the internet. And by the way, your local newspaper that you print daily or weekly if you're a community newspaper, is the highlight and the best of. You give people something that they actually want to hold on to. And by the way, the ads will come. They're there. People do need to get the word out. You're going to have to be happy with a 7 to 10% return on your investment. You can't be hoping for 25% or 30%. You can't set your standards like the major newspaper groups, the vulture capitalists do, who have destroyed daily newspapers, and a lot of good ones. They've completely destroyed them. You've got to invest in your product, and you got to be happy with the fact that you're providing a service, and you got to make enough to eat, and you can do it. But you've got to know what the fuck you're doing. For Jim, how many I can't tell you the number of newspapers, radio stations, and television stations, local ones, I know where the people running the show are the ad managers. You could be a station manager by graduating through the ranks of ads. What the hell do you know about putting together a newspaper? Sell the damn thing. But that's like putting here's a great car I want you to buy. It looks great. No engine. That's what American journalism is. It's a brand new car with no engine.
But the problem is this. And sorry, John, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, but I mean, a lot of the outside, a lot of the like fashion and watch media and all that stuff, quote unquote media, is exactly like that. It's basically it's the editor in chief sells the front cover of the newspaper or the magazine or whatever it is. Anyway, go ahead, Jim.
Well, because again, this is a result of the disease or a symptom of the disease, not the disease itself, in my opinion, which is because everyone jumped on the Google bandwagon 20 to 25 years ago and thought infinite is the way to go for us as opposed to finite, and that'll get us, if we're making $20 million a year just exposing our stories and our quote content, which I hate that goddamn word, to New York City. Again, if you're the New York Daily News, well, now look at that. If we multiply that, times a million, and we now have the world as our audience, think of all the money we can make. And of course, it was a shell game, and only Google benefited from it. But along with that, there were people like the Graham family, Mort Zuckerman, who was a really good owner of the Daily News for years, took losses, but was okay with a certain amount because he believed in journalism. He believed in covering New York City the way that it was covered. Where are those quote unquote benevolent billionaires now? Because everyone's out for the 20 to 25%, quarterly profits or whatever.
The VC returns, but it's almost impossible.
Right.
10x.
That's a problem with end stage capitalism, but I won't go there. I'm a budding capitalist myself. I want you to buy my book, buy early, buy often. But you do not sell what you stand for, what you believe in, merely for profits. You talk about the Daily News. I talk about a newspaper that I worked for that was one of the top 10 newspapers in the country for years. And that was the Courier Journal and Louisville Times, ran by the Bingham family. Always. Des Moines Register was another one. The Courier at one point in time had bureaus in London, Russia, right? They had a 12-man bureau at the state capitol, a 10-man bureau in D.C. They were in the rotation in the White House. This newspaper broke stories, won Pulitzers, and in fact was a great newspaper. Barry Bingham, his descendants who inherited his fortune, fought over the paper, so they sold it to Gannett. Gannett had a lot of other papers. So they look at, all these bureaus, 6 of them worldwide, outside of the United States, 10 of them in the United States. And they say, you know what? We have papers in all these places. We can just rely on those reporters that are already there, and we'll trim the budget and save money. So today, there are only like 2 people covering, in the Courier. The Courier looks like a shopper today, thanks to Gannett and these other vulture capitalists that have run these newspapers into the ground. They have 2 reporters at the state capitol, nobody in D.C., nobody around the world, because guess what? Gannett has people already there. The problem is, and here's the thing, you have people who were at the Courier who were covering those national events specifically for the Courier. So they were covering Kentucky issues and Louisville issues and regional issues. And when it was their turn in the rotation to be in the White House or in Congress or wherever, they brought issues before the entire body and before the White House that they otherwise wouldn't hear. Again, going back to what Mike McCurry said, he said, Brian, what we realized during the Clinton administration is that, and he wasn't the first to say this, but he said it so eloquently. He said, listen, we learn as much from those briefings from you as you from us. We get to hear issues from people around the country that we weren't aware of. Mm-hmm. Got to react to and create policy based on what you all brought to us. Now it's canned. It's vanilla. You've got freedom of God. Now I'm going back to Devo. Freedom of choice is what you've got, and freedom of choice from choice is what you want. We don't want the choice. It's very binary, A or B, Coke or Pepsi. And the bottom line is life is a lot more nuanced than that. And there are lots of policy issues that have resonance that people don't know about, but nobody's covering. There are county councils and city councils and, PTA and board and school board meetings where there are no reporters anymore. None. You can see it on, if you're interested, you can go and Google it and find the live stream. Folks, that's not the same thing as covering it, having a reporter in the room, watching the nuance going on and asking the questions that need to be asked.
You raise a really good point, and this is something I harped on my entire career, which is, and I had politicians say exactly the same thing to me about that symbiosis between what the reporters are bringing to the equation as far as what they're asking, what they're uncovering, and that's affecting policy and how it's being viewed by the people who are making the policy. But, and again, I'm with you. I was there when bought the Daily News. They brought me back Dog and Pony Show just to lay everybody off 6 months later. So they have totally decimated everything. But again, I look at them as a symptom, not the cause. And the other part, as far as when people want to turn the mirror on journalism and journalists, and I think this is where we struggle as an industry, is recognizing and identifying the fact that even if you had fully staffed bureaus at all of these places that you just mentioned, you still have to have the right people there. And the people who are aware of what we just talked about, that symbiosis and that dynamic, and your role as a journalist in that dynamic. Well, and there are way too many who don't understand that.
Let's start with getting people back there first, and then we can argue over the nuance of whether they're good or not.
How good they are.
True.
I want them there first. Yeah. But you're right about one thing, and that is the politicians learn as much from us as we do from them. For example, I was on one of the trams. I don't know if you've ever been in DC, but you ride from the Capitol to one of the office buildings. So one day I was in the Capitol, I was getting in the tram, little railroad car, and I'm getting in it to go to whatever the office building was. I forget which one it was. And I'm by myself and I'm looking at my cell phone, I'm taking notes, and I got to go there, blah, blah, and suddenly I get a tap on my shoulder. And this woman says she's not going to talk to you. And I go, who's not going to talk to me? I don't give a shit. Mind my own damn business here. There was only two other people. I watched them, just saw them out of the corner of my eye walk in on the tram and sit down in the car. And she turns, and it's Marjorie Taylor Greene. And her press aide goes, she don't want to talk to you. She's not going to talk to you. And I go, tell her I don't want to fucking talk to her either. She's a moron. And her press person goes, well, she's never heard that before. And I go, well, don't you think she should? Because the bottom line is we don't bring there aren't enough of us around to hold these people accountable. It's like Lauren Boebert walking. I was in a scrum in the Congress, and she's walking by. I go, anybody want to talk to me? Anybody want to talk to me? No, I don't want to talk to you. You're a moron. I barely, I can't stand talking to most congressmen, but I really don't like talking to morons. So it used to be that there were enough of us around that we could put pressure. The point of all this is there was enough of us around that we could put pressure on the Congress people to up their game enough to at least not talk about seditious, lying, malicious bullshit or fiction. They had to have a better game because we had a better game. We don't have a better game. There's barely any of us there. Those of us who are there are afraid of losing their press pass if they piss some of them off. And I don't give a shit. My bottom line is I don't care. If you're going to be a moron, I'm calling you out for it. Because bottom line is life's too damn short to deal with morons. If you want to stick your finger in a light socket, I'm the guy who's going to sit back and laugh as you do it. Because by God, if you're too damn dumb that you can't figure out the sticking in your, and it's not just the first time, it's the 30th time of sticking your finger in the light socket where you just go, this is a moron.
But that's where the decorum journalism comes in, Brian, as far as I'm concerned, which is we're told that we can't say these things because they're either rude or they're disrespectful, or that we have to hold these folks, just because they were elected to these offices, regardless of their behavior, to a certain standard that they're not holding themselves to. And I'll sum it up like this.
I hate to interrupt you, but did you miss a part where I don't give a shit? Fuck them.
No. But that's you, and I'm with you. I have the same attitude because I know what the job is. I know what's at stake. I know that what we are actually being charged. I know what we're being charged to do and what our responsibility is. But I'm sure you've been at a White House Correspondents' Dinner in your life. I've been to one, and I promised I would never go back because it was so revolting. It was so clear, and it was like peeking behind the curtain of Oz, and you saw what was actually taking place. You said it earlier. It was this in-club sort of mentality, and everybody there was just so goddamn happy to be part of the club.
I call it the nerd prom. There's the funniest story about that is during the first year of the Trump administration, I was a chief White House correspondent for Playboy, and Playboy decided to put on a party, an after party after the WHCA. So I go to our party, and I'm inside, and because folks, in case you haven't wondered, I've never been to a bad Playboy party. They're always good parties. So we had, and someone said, "Are there orgies going on?" I go, "No, that's the after party. We're mostly about, it's liquor, it's fun, it's the Playboy bunnies, it's music, it's pop culture, it's fun. It's a great party." So we're sitting there at that party, and I had to go out to the sidewalk to talk to the woman who was taking names to let her know that my wife was coming. And I said, just when Pam shows up, can you, bring her in? And so as we're sitting there talking, there is a line around the block. And nobody knows me from Adam, right? But people are walking up going, I'm a friend of Brian Karem's. I'm a friend of Brian Karem's. And the lady goes, tonight everybody is a friend of Brian Karem's. I don't know who you are. And I'm going, yeah, who's this Brian Karem? I want to meet him. It's all about, everybody, they knew the name because I covered the White House for Playboy, and all they want is that it's, James Carville said it best, that DC is Hollywood for ugly people. And that's all it is. It's everyone is in that envelope, wants to be a part of the in crowd. The WHCA, the White House Correspondents Association meeting is a wonderful idea because it's all about raising money for interns and scholarships. But what they've done to it to pervert it into what it is actually a little disheartening. I think it's great if the president shows up and speaks, but I think that what you are alluding to, Jim, and what I find is reprehensible is the ass kissing and the fawning of the powers. Here's Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I've been giving her shit every day for 6 weeks in her 6 weeks tenure at the time, and now you want me to go up and act like she's my best friend? No. I don't. That's the whole problem. They act like we're friends. They're not. They're sources. As I told them on many occasions, if after you get out of office, you want to come over to my house when I have a barbecue, you're invited, then we can be friends. But until then, you're a source. That's all you.
I think there's a good point to maybe close with, John, is that, the great line from Almost Famous, which is just remember they're not your friends. And that's that if we're teaching a journalism course, that might be the beginning and end of it. And if that were it, it would be valuable because if you take that with you throughout your career, you're gonna be better than you would be worse.
When you think you're their friends, they use you. Yeah. They use it. You can't let that happen, folks. If you're a journalist, fuck them.
I still remember my days.
I can curse, by the way.
No, you can. It's fine. This is wide open. This is all opinion. So, Free the Press is the book, Death of American Journalism and How to Revive It. It's deeply needed right now. Brian, thank you for joining us. This has been an enlightening experience.
Well, John, Jim, thanks for having me. I didn't take up too much of your time.
Not at all.
What are you doing?
This has been Editor in Grief. I'm John Biggs.
I'm Jim Rich.
And we will see you next episode.